I'm Kirsty from Infinite Balance, Fitness and Wellbeing, and I'm going to share with you a workshop on emotional eating. This is about seeing what emotional eating is and having a look at our own behaviours. If you have any questions at all, please do contact me. My details are here. Email kirsty@infinitebalance.co.uk, or you can find me on the web. And on here, it's also got a link to my Instagram and Facebook in the top left-hand corner of my website. And I would love to hear from you, especially if this workshop has helped you in any way. Okay, so let's go. So to start off with, what are we going to be doing? So this is recognizing our behaviors, and we're taking some time out to reflect to create sustainable lifestyle changes. This is always my word, but creating sustainable lifestyle changes, this is what we want to do. So we'll look at what emotional eating actually is, how this relates to you, food and mood, your distractions, how we can help ourselves be distracted from that emotional eating response, and then we'll start to put it together. Make notes as you go along and make this work for you. So what is emotional eating? Emotional eating is to fulfill emotional needs rather than physical needs, which we will talk about in more depth. But this is what we'll keep coming back to the whole time. So some questions you can ask yourself. Are you eating to fulfill your emotional needs rather than your physical needs? So are you eating when you're feeling a little bit more stressed? Do you go to the food cupboard, when you're starting to feel your stress response heighten? Are you eating when you're not hungry, or when you're actually full, you still want to eat? Do you eat to silence emotions to feel better when you're bored or anxious? And do you reward yourself with food? Quite often you might hear people went for a run, so they've had a reward, or they've had a week when they feel that they've been eating really well. So then on the Friday and Saturday, Sunday, they then reward yourself. Do you sometimes feel powerless or out of control around food? When that juicy big chocolate cake is there, are you able to walk away, or are you unable to resist it? So let's see what the symptoms are of emotional eating. And we're really just focusing on that emotional eating for the emotional hunger rather than the physical hunger. So to start with, I just want to say that using food to make us feel better or celebrate or in response to an emotion is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that we need to eliminate emotional eating at all. We're just looking at behaviours and seeing what tweaks we need to use. Because what it does happen when eating becomes a coping mechanism, we start to get in that cycle, which I will show you here. So we have the emotional hunger, and then we usually eat more than we actually need. And then you start to feel a bit frustrated and cross with yourself. And then we've stopped learning to deal with the emotions of that emotional hunger. And then often we have the weight control. We start to put on weight, and then lots of other things start to happen. Your mood, your clothes don't fit, your self-esteem, you become more at risk of heart disease. You don't feel as great about yourself. You can't keep up. So it is a cycle, and this cycle here I feel really shows it well. So we have something that evokes an emotion, and then you have that overwhelming urge to eat, and then that takes us through into the next point, which is you don't have as much choice over your choice of food, and then you're feeling guilty. So occasionally using food as a pick-me-up, as a reward, isn't a bad thing. But when you're eating is your primary emotional coping mechanism, when your first impulse is to be opening that fridge, opening that cupboard, or whenever you're feeling sad or bored, angry, you start to get stuck into that unhealthy cycle when the real feeling of the problem isn't being addressed, and we're silencing our emotions with the food. So we come into this cycle here of something happens. We then have that urge to eat. We then make that decision quite quickly without enough thought. And then you're like, oh, why did I do that? So it becomes a cycle, doesn't it? But now let me show you the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. I find this really interesting. And it really shows you what's going on. So emotional hunger can come on really suddenly, whereas your physical hunger comes on gradually. So already straight away you can think, well, actually, yesterday I was really suddenly hungry at 3 o'clock, but I was also really super tired and I needed to have that biscuit. But did I? Was I actually hungry? Because I'd had lunch an hour ago, for example. Um, your emotional hunger feels like it needs to be satisfied instantly, doesn't it? You're like, oh, I need something now. Whereas if you're physically hungry, it can wait. You are going to be okay. When you're emotionally hungry, you want those specific comfort foods, which we will look at in a bit. You're going to look at which foods you go to when you're physically and emotionally hungry. And physically hungry, you're open to lots of options. Lots of things sound good, don't you, when you're thinking about your physical hungry? Quite often it's about our dinners. Quite often emotional hunger is about snacks. So emotional hunger isn't satisfied with a full stomach. You just want to keep going. Whereas physical hunger stops when you're full. Um, it's naturally you've filled yourself, you've reached that target. Emotional eating can not always trigger feelings of guilt or powerless or shame or, oh, why did I do that? Whereas when you're eating to satisfy your physical hunger, again, think of your meals. You don't usually feel bad about yourself after your meal, do you? So that is a very generalized comparison of emotional to physical hunger. You could go deeper, but actually for now, we're just looking at the basics of emotional eating. We're not going into too much depth. So let's think about how this works for you. So when you feel hungry, how does it fit? How does it hit you? Is it sudden or is it gradual? You can think of that difference between emotional is a sudden hunger, physical is gradual. Can you control it with that physical? Or does it feel overwhelming, emotional? When hunger hits you, do you want specific foods? Quite often with emotional, it's those high fats, high sugars, or convenience foods. It's quick, easy to grab foods. Whereas with your physical hunger, you're quite happy to make the time to open a can of tuna, open some soup, heat some soup up, cook some chicken. The difference is there, isn't it? Does your hunger often lead to mindless eating? That means they're non-stop eating. You've had something and then you just keep going. And it's the same there with wanting to keep going until you're stuffed. And then not always does it ever lead to that feeling of regret or guilt or shame. So just thinking about hunger, how does it work for you? How does you think of the day you've had today or yesterday? How did it feel for you? How did it work? Have you got things that you think, oh, okay, that might need to change? So let's think about a little bit deeper about this. So I've just put out 5 different causes, reasons which might cause emotional eating. There's stress, lots of different stress. Silence emotions, that is when you're feeling bored or angry or tired, to try and quench those emotions, we're turning to food. Your boredom or feeling of emptiness or loneliness, maybe a childhood habit. Maybe after school every day you went to the shop and you bought a chocolate bar, and that's still a habit that you've got now. Maybe every day you had a dessert. Maybe that's something you've got now. So have a little think about your life and your setup, and does it cry out to you at all? Social influences. Um, i- we're currently in lockdown as I record this, so we haven't got the going out with friends as much. But are there things happening? Are you encouraged to do certain things? Are you encouraged to go certain places for dinner and have certain things? Or maybe it's linked to drinks as well with alcohol. Or do you have a group of people that find it really hard when you've had a really big meal and you're really full and you don't want that cheese, but then they give you a bit of a hard time if you're not going to have that cheese? Are there social influences that are affecting you as well? So I want you to choose one of these. It doesn't have to be one of these. It could be similar, some reason that causes emotional eating. Choose one of them, and you're going to have that in your head for the next slide. So they're going to do something. So this reason that causes emotional eating, you're going to put in the middle. And above, you're going to put the root cause. What was it that caused it? So, for example, was it stress? What caused it? Work hours, no time, really busy, or the stress might be other stress, it might be illness. There's so many things you can have for stress, and it's going to be personal to you. And then what happens? What happens after you feel that way? What do you eat? What do you go to? What is your emotional response? So remember, this is something that's causing us to emotionally eat. What do you emotionally eat? Where are you? And so you are now looking at your behaviors. We're looking at our behaviors head on, because quite often we do these things and we think no one's watching, but let's be really proactive and look to see what we're doing and what our behaviors are doing, and then we can start to make the changes that we need to make. You might want to do this activity for another root cause as well. If so, just pause this and then you can carry on. So I'm going to move on from here, but you can also take a bit longer on that activity. So next activity. Okay, can you identify the foods and drinks linked to your hunger? So which foods and drinks do you eat when you're emotionally hungry? And what do you eat when you're physically hungry? Write a little list or do a mind map, emotionally, physically, or 2 lists. I wonder if you could think of 5 foods for each one. Once you've done your 5 foods, look to see how different they are. Are they different? Are they the same? Do they have anything in common? Are there things that you think you need to change? That's it. Quite often, the emotional hungry is going to be high fats, high sugars, convenience foods, those foods that are quick and easy to grab. If you can't do it now, maybe do it during the day, and just write down, when I was emotionally hungry, I ate this. When I was physically hungry, I ate this. So it could be an ongoing thing. So either pause me now or keep going with me. Food and mood. Okay, this is the daily check-in, right? These 2 questions at the top would be great to have in a post-it note by your bed. How are you feeling today? What will help you? So we're not thinking about what's happening, we're now thinking, how can we help ourselves? So the first thing in the morning, ask yourself how you're feeling and what will help you. So instead of letting that response happen, can we come back a little bit and put things in place? Is it you need to plan out your food? Is it you need some exercise? Are you tired? Do you need some more rest? Do you need some help? Do you need to ask someone to help you out? These 2 questions can really help you for the day ahead. And then throughout the day, question yourself, are you eating because you're physically hungry or emotionally hungry? I do not want anyone to be cutting the calories from this workshop. This is not about cutting out our nutritional intake. This is about nurturing ourselves and knowing our behaviors. So make sure, if you are eating for emotional hunger, don't just cut out. Make sure you still have enough calories per day. Make sure you've got enough calories and you've got good macronutrient breakdown, at least 50-55% carbohydrates, up to 50-55% carbohydrates, at least 20% protein, if not more. And the protein is really going to help that hunger and the healthy fats to come in. So these would be great to have on a post-it, maybe this one, the physical or emotional in the kitchen, and how are you feeling today? What will help you in the bedroom when you wake up, when you're getting ready in the morning. Moving on. Okay, this is super interesting to do. So if you have a day, maybe you write down for yesterday or have a go today. You write down all the foods that you eat in one day or as you go. Grab 3 highlighters, a red, an orange, and a green, and write down relating to your mood. So each colour will relate to emotion or a few emotions, and you will tag the colour to every single thing you eat of how you feel when you're going throughout the day. So if your mood is those colours, and then you could also have a mark out of 10 of how hungry you are. So when you've had that morning snack, how did you feel in your mood and what were you out of 10? At lunchtime, how did you feel in your mood? What you out of 10? And if you keep that for a few days, you're going to see some really interesting patterns that might reveal the connection between mood and food. If you do this, please let me know and let me know how you go. I find things like this really interesting and really eye-opening as well. And if you want to talk through it with someone, I'm here. I love doing this. I love looking at our behaviors and our lifestyle and say, okay, well, that's great. It might be you don't need to change anything, or it might be you look at it and go, actually, I need to tweak a few things here and there. And it's great to talk. So I am here to talk to you if you want to talk through it. This is a bit more of an in-depth. If you want to be more in-depth, you choose one meal and you go, how do you feel before, during, and after? You can use your colours and you can use your marks out of 10 for your hunger as well. Really interesting. Okay, distraction. So when that emotional eating response is there, we need to find other ways to feed our feelings, because if we keep going back to the food all the time, we're not going to be able to control our eating habits. And going a little bit deeper into this before we go on to the distractions, we're going to look at two things: just why we need to do it and how we can help ourselves. Because quite often we will follow a diet routine or nutritional routine, it's not necessarily a diet, and we know that this is really logical. The nutrition advice here is great. I completely understand that. Yes, I'm going to do this and this. But if your emotions are hijacking the process, so an emotion is evoked and then you've got an instant response to food, you're just not being fair to yourself. So we have to work out different ways to fulfill that emotion so you can meet your other goals. So otherwise we're causing barriers all the time. So we need to find alternatives to food for emotional fulfillment with distractions. But we will do this in just a sec. First of all, you need to help yourself. So take away temptation, have in the house what you want to eat, but don't deprive yourself. If there's treats that you want, you have them, but have them out of the house. You have to drive to get them, or you have to walk or cycle or run, and have snacks, healthy snacks that you enjoy in the house. If you're struggling with snacks, let me know, I can help. I run a program called 30-Day Reset. We can get lots of good ideas on there. And I also have a page on my members area that I can share with you. Really important, learn from your setbacks. If you've had a bad day and ended up having something you wouldn't usually have, think, right, okay, next week on that day, I'm going to plan my food out. I'm going to take my food with me. If you're going to work, plan in your snacks and have everything ready so you know it is going to work, and focus on the positive. Always focus on the positive that's working. I shared 3 stars and a wish the other day on Instagram and Facebook. 3 things that's going well, 1 thing to improve on. Always focus on the positive when we're focusing on our emotional eating and our behavior change. So think about how you can help yourself. See if you can make yourself to create 2 actions from here. Is it what can you do to make it easier for yourself? Is it treats in the cupboard, planning? What would you like to have as an odd treat? Know what you'd like to have as an odd treat. It's fine to have odd treats. We don't want it to be depriving ourselves. What healthy snacks, and how can you learn from your setbacks? So just reflect on that. Okay, this is the distractions. So this is a poster that you could create to have in the kitchen or behind the kitchen door. The 5555. You can develop this as you want. You can change what these mean for you. This is one example. So jot down 5 people, friends, parents, and that can also include social media groups. I've got Facebook groups, Infinite Balance members group. I'm always encouraging people to share on there. And the 30-Day Reset group, people share when they have a bad day. Well, not a bad day. They have a day when they've made decisions that they're like, oh, why did I do that? Or before they do it, they're sharing and saying, I'm feeling really tired. What can I do? Things, people that you can turn to, or social media groups. It doesn't necessarily mean to phone up and say, I'm having a really bad day. You could just phone them for a chat, just to distract yourself. 5 ways you can relax. Have a think of 5 different things you could do that's nice and chilled for you. Places you can go to feel calm and feel safe. 5 things you can say to yourself that are positive, maybe things to remind you why you want to be doing this. 5 things to distract yourself. You could think about 5 different methods of exercise. All the 5. So you're thinking of different ways to distract yourself when you're having that emotional eating response, and have that behind a kitchen door. So just scribble on a bit of paper now. You can pause me, and then you can have it on your kitchen door. And when you're wanting it, you can have a look and see what you can do. But remember, you do still need to think, am I emotionally or physically hungry? If you are physically hungry, we need to be eating, making sure we're having enough calories in the day. Okay, let's put it together. This is one that you definitely want to jot down. So have a think. Your triggers, we've already talked about it, but let's put it together. Your triggers to be emotionally hungry and physically hungry, how you feel in each of those, and what food and drink you go to. So you might just have a couple of things in each box. You might have more, but just give yourself a bit of time to reflect and think, what makes me feel like that? How do I feel? And what do I go to? The more we're aware of our behaviours, the more it's going to help. So you might want to pause this here as well, just to have a little look at it. Okay, I could not complete this without talking about lockdown. As I record this, it's March 2021. We are finishing lockdown 3. We're hoping there's not going to be another one. Consider the positives that have been created in lockdown that are linked to your nutrition and your eating and your physical activity. Were there any negatives that have happened that need to be addressed, things that perhaps need to be tweaked or changed? Did you create habits that you need to change? Did the children create habits? This has really come up because seen a lot of comments about snacking of children. And then you can relate everything we've just been chatting about. You can think, okay, so what were the positives? Were the triggers? What has there been? Have you been eating as a family? Have you been food planning more? Have you been able to make some really nutritious meals? What is it? Focus on those positives that have gone well. The negatives, what's happened that hasn't been so great for you? What needs to be addressed? And we just need to think about these. Don't do massive lists. I would say with your negatives, you don't want any more than 2 or 3, definitely, and the create habits. But the positives, go for it. If you got 5, that's great. Try not to do massive lists, otherwise it just all goes into one. Okay, and also weekends, days off. So your work days and your days off are obviously different. What I eat on my days off is different to what I eat on my work day, which is natural. But we just need to be aware that we're not overly eating within the weekend and then creating guilt and shame. Plan your weekend meals and snacks. Create a self-care box, so you know other things in your head. Self-care box, there are other ways to relax than just food and drink. Don't restrict yourselves, but be aware and be mindful about what you're eating, because it really is about that balance. If we eat in, take in more than we expend, we're going to put on weight. Okay, and if we want to maintain where we are, we want to be having the same calorie intake, calorie outtake. And finally, these 4 considerations. We need to make sure we're having enough sleep. We need to make sure we're eating well. We need to make sure we're exercising regularly. We've got a daily exercise as well as some high intensity, maybe 3 high intensity sessions a week, and we're resting. If we're tired when we wake up, we're going to probably quite likely might start eating emotionally during the day. If we're not eating well, we haven't planned our foods, we're likely going to be going for the snacks more. If we're not exercising, we might be feeling sluggish, we might be feeling tired. And if we're not giving ourselves enough rest, again, we might be feeling tired and sluggish. So very much about looking after yourself. So think of these 4 considerations when you're putting all of your mindful thoughts together about this presentation. So if you have any questions, please do contact me. I would love to hear from you. I would love to know if anything in here was useful. I would love to be able to chat through anything that you would love to chat to. I'm here. I'm a sounding board. I will give anyone a free 30-minute fitness and wellbeing consultation if you'd like to go through your goals as well. You can contact me on kirsty@infinitebalance.co.uk or on my website, www.infinitebalance.co.uk, or find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm quite active on there. You can find my Facebook and Instagram on my website in the top left-hand top left corner, and the logos are there, or just put in Infinite Balance and it should come up. So thank you very much for joining me. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I really hope you can take away at least 5 things. I hope you've got a little notebook full of little notes and journeys. I hope you know what emotional eating and understand emotional eating is, so it's to fulfill our emotional needs rather than our physical. I hope that you've been able to take away some ideas of how your emotional eating is, and maybe you've now got a few things that you want to consider, or it might be you thought, actually, I'm really happy with the way things are now. So yeah, please do get in touch, and thank you very much for joining me.